which that was a great point, is I feel like we have more talent than UAB. I don't understand why we aren't playing more man. And maybe that's because he knows our DBs can't handle man. I'm not for sure. I'm just talking out loud here. And then you look at the fact of the whole DJ Ivey thing is, I mean, how much can we take if every other game it feels like the man's giving up something. You know,
Yeah.
I felt like I will say this. I thought our defense would be a lot more impressive. Looking at the stats, I'm trying to pull them up here just to make sure what I saw wasn't crazy. UAB, they only had 14 points. They had 285 yards. They threw for 205 yards and 80 rushing yards. So it's not like they went up and down the field on us. You know, it was kind of similar to what you said. They were a patient offense. They took dink and dunks, but I don't know. Maybe my expectations were too high. I can tell you this: DJ Ivey has been compared to Mike Rump. You know, by Mike Rump, by fans. They mentioned those two in the same sentence, and I think once they put that in my mind, I expected DJ Ivey with this size, with this speed, he put in a lot of work last offseason. He totally changed his body composition. His length, I just thought he would be a little better.
Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I think the one thing that, he looks like Rumpf, whereas ate like Rumpf. I think the one thing that made Rumpf really special was that he was super, super smart. And he played with even smarter guys back at safety. Like he played, like when he was out there playing, he had Reed and Al Blades behind him. He was across from Phil Buchanan and Leonard Myers. Like he was playing around guys that knew how to play. And they played aggressively. Like all of those guys were aggressive players. And also you had a defensive scheme that allowed them to be aggressive at all times. Like Rumpf, when he got up in somebody's face, it wasn't going to be, I'm going to stand 2 yards from you, but off the snap, I'm going to let you run and go where you want. Like that would never happen in 99, 2000. That was not the way we played. Yet, like I'm watching them today and I'm looking at, knowing full well, like there was a series in the second play, it was like the same pass route 2 times in a row. The first one was a little quick slant where the guy gets a free release, even though Al was like 2-3 yards off of him, gets a free release, comes inside, catches it, gets like 4 or 5 yards. Then the next play was the same thing, free release, but Al's playing a little bit tighter. Then he gets his hands in there and knocks it away, and it was, turnover because they had to punt the ball away. But I'm thinking to myself, why don't you let Al just get in that guy's face and disrupt him as soon as he comes off that line? Because that quarterback was not good. He was not a good quarterback. He's probably going to be one of the worst 2 quarterbacks that we'll see this season. You're going to give that guy who knows exactly where he's going. Coaches told him, throw the slant. If that slant's not there because Al got in his face and disrupted him at the line, he's going to get a sack. He's going down, or he's going to throw it out of bounds like he did a lot. So if you have Ivey, who's physically very impressive, who has that length, like you mentioned, like he should be up in receivers' face all day long. He should make those receivers hate to see him come across the line from him because they know that they're going to get beat up the first 2-3 seconds of their route. And they're going to have to work for every single second of that route. So if they do eventually break free, it's going to be a second and a half after than it should be, which means those ends have a chance to make a play. So right from the start, I would have had the corners up there disrupting, like you said, playing that like true man coverage and then forcing UAB to adjust because we never forced them to adjust. Like they didn't have a great offensive game because they just aren't very good on offense, in my opinion, after watching them now for this week and then even the last time out against Central Arkansas. But we never forced them into a turnover, which is impossible to imagine with the way that kid throws the ball. So like
he was just throwing. Honestly, he was just throwing it up and praying that it fell into receiver's hands.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't make any sense. Like I even tweeted last week when I was watching the Central Arkansas game. Like he threw one over the middle of the field last week that was just like someone will get it. Like I don't know who's gonna catch this, but someone will catch it. Like when you're a little kid, you instead of like kicking off, you just throw it to the other team. it looked like that. I'm like, Bolden's going to have 5 picks. If this is how he plays, Bolden's going to have 5 interceptions. Gervin's going to have an interception. And we weren't forcing him to throw that pass because their guys were just running the routes they wanted to run. He couldn't hit some of them, but we never forced him to make a really tough decision, which would have led to an interception.
Let me ask you this. And this is something that has always bothered me about Coach Baker. Or I don't know if it's Coach Baker, I don't know if it's Coach Diaz, but I feel like since Coach Baker has gotten here, there has been a rotation of safeties. It's almost like one series, these 2 safeties are in. The next series, those 2 safeties are in. There's a rotating of safeties. And I understand we got talented players. We got to get talent on the field. But at the same time, to be fair for DJ Ivey, because I'm hard on DJ Ivey, but I got to be fair. As a I played corner in high school and at JUCO, you build a relationship with your safety. Throughout the season, you learn that, if a receiver goes this way, I know my safety is going to be that way. And if I tap my head, the safety knows what that means. You build a relationship with your safeties. What do you think about the rotations of our safeties? Is that not weird to you, or am I nitpicking?
I think it is, and I think they get so heavy into that, like this is the way the rotation will go, and like you're right, Baker's been doing that for a while because they do it on the defensive line. They're very like, this is how we're going to move through. He will play this many plays, and they do it with the safeties. But if you think back to even 2017, like when you're looking at that defense, like who was playing safety. Redwine and Johnson were playing safety. And those guys were super comfortable with each other because they've been playing with each other since Killian. So like years and years in the past. So they had 6, 7, 8 years of experience playing near each other. So that's invaluable. Like you said, as a DB, how important it is to be playing near and have that whole boundary of the defense, that whole back 4, know where the other people are going to be. It's important for linebackers to know where the safeties are going to be. So that rotation of the safeties even affects the linebackers and how comfortable they are. Like that's why I always say like Shaq Quarterman was best like when he was younger in 2017 and 2016 because he had safeties behind him who would, number one, would always have his back if he made a mistake. Like there was very rarely like a big play over the middle of the field that went beyond Shaq and got through the safeties too. And number 2, he knew exactly where those guys behind him would be, and they were probably communicating with him constantly. You put a rotation of safeties, like, well, who takes the lead? Who's the main communicator? Who tells the corners like where to go? It makes it a lot tougher, especially when you know that a couple of those guys are just probably going to be the better athletes, probably have the higher ceiling. You want to just kind of run with those guys and let them make some mistakes here or there, but ultimately your defense will be better off for it.
All right. Is there anything that surprised you about the defense today?
Yeah, my biggest surprise, and like if I were to pick a defensive MVP, it's going to sound kind of weird considering like what's happened over the last 2 years, but I would probably say Nesta Silvera. Nesta was playing football out there. He looked like the guy that we all saw in the highlight tapes, because when those Heritage guys sat down to pick their schools, and we kind of knew that the DBs weren't going to pick Miami, and we kind of saw the writing on the wall. But when Nesta picked the U, we were like, this is the guy. This is the guy who's going to be the Sap. This is the guy that's going to be the William Joseph, the Cortez Kennedy. This guy is going to be a stud on the line because he's like from day one. Like what we think about Leonard Taylor, like a lot of people thought that about Nesta coming in. And the last 2 years really haven't been that, with some injuries, some this and that. But when I saw him out on the field, like my first reaction was that he looks different. He looks like a pro, And usually when you think about that, like, or when I think about a defensive lineman, like Jalen Phillips, like bulked up. Jalen Phillips got a lot bigger, and that made me say he looks like a pro. But Nesta, he slimmed down. He looks like he got control of his weight. Looks like when he got, a better overall conditioning for his body, because that quickness that I saw today, that was what I've been hoping to see for a couple of years. That's the kind of quickness that's going to get him some money when he makes it into the NFL, because if he plays like that all season, like offensive lines will have a lot of problems. Like I don't know if like he has the Gerald Willis when he